Comparing Australia's housing crash to the rest of the world. Let's have a look. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Heiser Says. I thought we'd read this article from MacroBusiness that compares Australia's housing crash to others throughout the world. Just because, well, it's interesting and everyone loves videos about the impending crash of the Australian housing market. Frankly, because so many of us are investing, own property, or have businesses related to the property industry. So it has a huge ripple-on effect. Now I've got my stein of coffee. Let's get into it. So how Australia's housing crash compares internationally. So this is from the author. On Tuesday, I produced a chart pack benchmarking Australia's current housing bust against prior episodes over the past 30 years. It shows the following. So Australia's current price decline at the capital city level is the third longest since the early 1980s, but the deepest in terms of depth. Sydney's is the second deepest decline versus prior episodes, as well as the third longest in terms of duration. None of this is sounding good, is it? Melbourne's decline is the deepest thus far and the third longest in terms of duration. Well, it's not really over, so it's still going on, isn't it? So declaring it's the third longest is implying that it's ended, which it hasn't. Perth's decline is both the longest and deepest in recorded history. Well, yes, that's not surprising at all. I've had colleagues that purchased in Perth during the boom times of the mining, and it was tough to sell. They had to take a while to sell. So today I've benchmarked Australia's current decline against those experienced by the US, UK, Ireland, and Spain from the mid-2000s, commonly referred to as the global financial crisis, as measured by the Bank for International Settlements. So let's have a look here. So we've got the USA from 2006 to 2011, and it's the dark blue, and you can see it coming down here, and this is the index comparing it. So look at that drop, steadying down. Oh boy, look at Ireland. Damn, that's just crazy. I know, Ireland was, what was it? What do they call it? Like the Irish Rose, or maybe I'm making that up. But I know the Emerald Isle or the Golden Leprechaun. That sounds about wrong, but still, I had friends working there as well who were just taking advantage of the huge growth in the property sector. I went over there and it went off, and look at that bust. And here we go, UK. UK, boom, down over 2 years. Australia, currently going on. Look at that. So we're treading probably as bad as Spain and America, but not as bad as the UK or Ireland. But Ireland, look at that, from 2007 to 2013. Wow. We really did miss the beginning of the GFC, to be honest, here in Australia. I mean, I honestly, I'd argue that architectural fees hadn't really recovered since then. Just what we can charge for projects. Engineers I've spoken to are saying similar things. So that's just from my professional experience and talking to people. So I wonder how it's going to keep going. As shown above, Australia's current decline is relatively minor when compared to the other nations, at only 9.2% over 18 months, compared to the US, a 32% decline over 63 months. Well, we can still hit that. We can still, if we, let's do Miss Science here. If we keep tracking, even if we're mimicking the US, we'll be worse than them. See, so they're not comparing apples to apples here in your chart, mate. Come on, Leith. You're not comparing apples to apples. But I understand. Probably the rate, what you should be comparing is a chart showing the rate of change, the delta change. And I guess we can pick that up with the slope of the lines here. And I would say that, currently the Australian housing bust is, well, it's a much more rapid rate of change than the other two, isn't it? Than Spain and the US. But not as bad as the UK or Ireland. 55%. 55% over 69 months. The UK, 18% over 18 months. So we are doing, the UK is probably, it was the sharpest drop. The UK did twice as bad as Australia did in the same period. Wow. That said, at this stage of the cycle, i.e. 18 months in, Australia's decline has been relatively steep. Oh, well, that's what I get for kind of reading these on the fly. Just to keep my impressions fresh for all of you. Falling faster than the US and Spain, but not as fast as Ireland or the UK. Well, yeah, there you go. So there we are. Yep. Ooh, we were a bit worse than Ireland for the beginning there. Ooh, we were really bad right at the first few months. Finally, I've benchmarked Sydney's and Melbourne's current decline against the other housing bust nations. As you can see, Melbourne's decline has outpaced all other nations except the UK. Good on you, Melbourne. Go, Melbourne. Go, Melbourne. At this stage of the cycle, whereas Sydney's decline is beating the USA and Spain. Well, yeah, wow. So Sydney, the fact that Sydney isn't as declining as badly as Melbourne, it's pulling us up. Sydney's pulling us up. Melbourne's dragging us down. But you know why? It's because Melbourne's at the bottom of the country. Yep, that's science. That's a joke, people. Fantastic. So while Australia's housing bust has a long way to go to match other nations, it's so far on track. I will continue to update these charts every month. Oh, this is fantastic. So I'll probably make an effort of following this and talking about it. I think we're definitely on track to. Hopefully, we're not going to be as bad as Ireland or the UK. But you have to remember one thing, everyone: the election hasn't happened. The election hasn't happened. So every time there is a potential for an election, a lot of the government spending agencies don't want to make any new decisions. Spending freezes. Organizations will either hold off on using their budgets, or they can't. And a lot of people in the private sector as well, there's uncertainty and there's risk, so they will also hold off on making any spending, on looking at any other opportunities to invest. So let's have a look at another perspective on this, and this is a blog post from Wolf Richter, and this is Wolf Street, his blog here, an update on the spreading housing bust in Australia and why it's happening. So home prices in the metro area of Sydney, according to CoreLogic's Home Value Index, fell 0.9% in March from February and 10.9% from March last year. Prices in the most expensive quarter of the housing market dropped 11.9% year over year. Since its peak in July 2017, the index has dropped 13.9%. So you can see here he's got the Sydney price drop coming down. I mean, look at that, how drastic that is. And Sydney is what's keeping us above the rate of decline as bad as Ireland and the UK. Remember that, because Melbourne's worse than all of them. So for a while there was a rumor that first-time buyers would save the market. Really? And that this was visible because in the big cities such as Sydney, they could only afford to buy condos, and condo prices would hold up, it was said. But condo prices, which is apartments to Australians, are now rapidly catching up. The CoreLogic Home Value Index for condos dropped 1.2% in March from February and is down 8.9% year over year. In Melbourne, same thing. Let's have a look here. He's showing us the Melbourne price decline, and we'll go a bit down because, I mean, we're familiar with all these statistics, and I'll link, well, most of you will be, and I'll link to this article if you want to read all his analysis. But let's jump down to the factors that he's saying is driving this decline. So there are numerous factors in the sharp price declines in Sydney and Melbourne that have come together with impeccable timing. So these are the factors. We have a look here. You can see Sydney down, Melbourne down, Brisbane not down so much, Hobart tiny little bits going up and down, Adelaide, yeah. So I mean, frankly, just the affordability of Brisbane, Hobart, Adelaide compared to Melbourne and Sydney means that people can sell up in these cities and move up here. And if you come into Queensland, come to Brisbane, you get warmer weather, you get more exciting and varied politicians, you get warmer weather, better food. No, not really. I'm not really selling Brisbane, am I? I love it here. Prices are too darn high for average workers. After years of blistering price gains that have by far outweighed wage gains, unaffordability hamstrings many potential buyers who actually live in the homes that buy. Yep, this removes a big part of the potential buyers. Well, yeah, you can't afford to. Enormous household debt. mostly related to housing, just as collateral values are now declining. In the fourth quarter of 2018, the ratio of household debt to disposable income hit a new record of around 190%, the highest in the world, or among the highest in the world. That is crazy. The construction boom is dousing the market with record new supply. Yes, including a flood of new condos that has gotten worse. Worried attention of the Reserve Bank of Australia. Yeah, Brisbane is just insane. The number of apartments that have gone up. I have friends that have invested just before the decline in a development, and it's taken like 2 years, and they still haven't gotten their return because they're still trying to sell the apartments. The exposure of the bank's mortgage shenanigans and wrongdoing. The exposure was first carried out in the media and eventually and all too gingerly by regulators and ultimately by the Royal Commission into misconduct in the banking, superannuation and financial services industries. These revelations and the regulatory crackdown are putting a dampener on these shenanigans. See, now I'm a bit questioning this interpretation. In many ways, it's working to the bank's favor because the proposed changes to mortgage broking and for my public declaration, I would consider mortgage broking to be quite a fun job to do. You know, you're helping people get their homes, and it's something I consider doing. And their brokers are going to cop it, and the banks will just sweep up more of the loans, more of the money. It'll destroy a market. I don't think it'll actually help. So there's tighter credit conditions. Yes, banks are now scrutinizing borrowers more thoroughly, as they've tightened up underwriting standards. Liar loans and other shenanigans are more difficult to pull off, and regulators have cracked down on interest-only loans for investors. Yes, well, I watched a 60-minute segment about a poor investor that had to sell his properties because he couldn't only pay interest only. He was going to live off the rent. I mean, I don't understand how people can expect that. Consumer sentiment has soured on real estate after years of careless hype. Well, yes, consumer confidence is down and sentiment is down. He hasn't made any mention yet of the Opal Tower fiasco. What's happened there? La Crosse Tower fiasco. Maybe it hasn't filtered through over to the States, where I'm assuming the author is from, because that has also damaged consumer confidence. Chinese investors have lost their enthusiasm, in part because prices have dropped and the magic of quick and easy wealth is gone, and in part because China's capital controls have started to work. Already concerning the darkening dynamics last year, CoreLogic has noted a substantial reduction in foreign buyer activity. Yes, well, I've worked on projects where the whole viability of the project was just dependent on Chinese buyers. And we looked at a video the other day of how much of our export economy is dependent on China. So, you know, they're having a slowdown for other reasons as well. We're kind of screwed. We're screwed if a big part of our property pillar of our economy is dependent on Chinese investors. You know, this pillar here, and then you've got the other one here, which is our export market is dependent on China. Bloody hell. Time for some changes. The one factor that isn't a factor is the Reserve Bank of Australia's policy rate, which is at a record low, and mortgage rates remain near records low. So this is not a bubble that got pricked by the central bank. No, it isn't. On the contrary, the RBA tried to keep the bubble going back in August 2016 by lowering its policy rate to that record low. Yes, that surprised me. Okay, and he's saying don't use ad blockers, but want to support the night, you donate beer money. Oh, no, that's good. So I think I'll look more of his stuff. So it seems like a good analysis that he's done here. And, you know, I'd agree with most of his conclusions. I think he's missing a few things that are probably specific to our market and our media, particularly all of the concern regarding Opal and the construction and the Sherwood Gold Report and these type of issues. So, guys, let me know what you think. You know, are you worried? Well, most people are. Do you think he's right here with his analysis? What about comparing Australia to the rest of the world, our housing bust? Are we going to be as bad as all of them? Please like, share, and subscribe. Ding the bell to see my daily videos. Comment and let me know what you think is going to happen. I want to plan to do a video looking at tips for people to deal with perhaps mortgage stress. You know, say you've interest rates go up, your mortgage payments get high. What are some things you can do? Maybe you've been made redundant, or you're running a business and you've lost work. I want to look at tips to address that. So if anyone wants to add any to the comments, please help me out. That'd be great. I've got a few here because we've had challenges that we've had to adjust to, particularly in our game, and I think that's something worth sharing. Guys, thanks for joining me for this episode, and I'll see you later. Bye for now.